All right, welcome back to Ancient Civilization. We have been looking at the Neolithic Revolution. This would have been the agriculture, the domestication of farm animals, development of farming, using those ancient wheat seeds, permanent settlements, and the beginning of social class. We just started to briefly discuss this. This would have been about 10,000 BC, meaning before Christ. There is the rise of a civilization. So there are 8 specific features that you need in order for a farming settlement or a farming community to become a village, to go to a city, to become that civilization. So we kind of touched on cities in the last 2 weeks, talking about how with farming, people were now allowed to stay in one area. They did not have to travel. They could build permanent homes. We also kind of talked about government. We talked about religion. Some, though, that we have not talked about are that job specialization, social class, public works, art and architecture, and the system of writing. So today we're going to briefly be reviewing cities, government, religion, and then we're going to get into the heart of job specialization, social classes, and public work. Next week, we're going to start our art and architecture, and we'll have some activities to go along with that, as well as our system of writing. So, cities typically emerge near a farming center. So, this would have been your farming communities. So, you would have had probably about 5 to 6 families within a 40-mile radius, and they would have settled down and started to grow that domesticated wheat plant that they realized that they could travel with and plant it in one area and it would grow. As they started to have surplus food, it caused other individuals to come into the area. Therefore, they had what is known as a population growth. As a population grows, so does the need for additional space. This caused people to dispute land and to fight against each other for those resources. So one city or farming village would fight against another one, and if they conquered them, then they would become more wealthy and elite and have more surplus food, and therefore start to develop that need for a specialized trade. They would have more time. So, as populations grow, we know we had additional need for space. This led to our conquering of nearby regions to form a larger community known as that civilization. Civilization served as a center of religion, government, and culture. So, government. We talked about how the first role of government is to manage the society's resources. That would have been their surplus foods or their specialized trade, such as maybe cloth making or special jewelry making, or their skills to build a solid house. Government uses these resources so that everyone can get what they need in order to survive. That way, one person doesn't end up with too much compared to the other person. But as we all know, that did not stay equal because then we got into the upper, lower, and middle class. They started to take advantage, those that had a little bit more, and then they started telling people that the gods were calling them to be leaders. So we kind of know that this information is just a little bit different. Yes, their job is to manage society's resources. That is what our government does currently. That is what they set up a government for during our ancient civilization period that we're looking at, but it did not stay that way. The second role of a government is to delegate jobs such as a military to protect the people and land. So, as we kind of talked about last week, you have your kings, queens, pharaohs. They would have delegated these jobs to people who were called the government, and then the government would delegate their areas to different people. Remember, we referred to some classmates. Sometimes one of my classes, I referred to some of our students. They got to be the kings, queens. The other class, we did not get to do that, but don't worry, we're going to be having other activities where we're going to be actively involved in it. So, second role of government is to delegate jobs. We also looked at the established religion. Now, we really struggled with this overall as a class, and I feel that maybe I didn't explain it correctly. So here we go. So, a religion is a set of shared spiritual beliefs. Everyone generally followed the same beliefs. Religion was often connected to rulers and government because we know this is one thing you guys did really well on. You guys knew that rulers and people who had those high positions in government would use religion as like a cover. The gods are telling me that I have this gift and you guys need to listen to me. I know what to do. You guys don't know. I have been blessed by the gods. So let me lead. And so people would start to believe that and they would follow that belief. There are a variety of religions. So during the Paleolithic era, you would have noticed that people had the belief of animism, meaning that they believed that there was a spirit in the animal. Now, they showed this through art drawings that they had on cave walls that archaeologists have continued to discover over the last couple of years. There is also polytheism, meaning the worship of many gods, as you guys will notice as we study our ancient civilizations. A lot of the early civilizations believed in polytheism, and that is still going on in today's society. Then you have monotheism. Now, monotheism is a little bit of a new term for you guys. It means one God. So this would have to do with Judaism, Christianity, and a few others, okay? So, meaning one God. Polytheism, many gods. Animism, the spirit of an animal, plant, or object, okay? So, animism was showed on cave walls. Polytheism used symbols. As you guys can tell, I have the eye of God. This is one of their symbols that they represented for God, one of the gods. So, the eye of the God. And monotheism normally uses like the cross or the symbol of the resurrection. So those are some things that are associated with the belief of one God. Now, our new category, job specialization. And we've kind of looked at the term specialization. You guys might have remembered that you guys have had it for a vocabulary term and were required to look at the definition. So, for job specialization, we know that farming led to surplus for others. Now, with this surplus, they were able to provide for maybe their brother or sister. And that brother and sister would have now had time to develop a specific skill or trait. And that specific craft skill, they're known as skilled craft workers. They would have created like building the clothes, materials, houses, pottery, and jewelry. They would have also had the skill to maybe barter or trade with other people. They might have been a really good barter. Like, think about when you're wanting something from your parents and you are like, Mom, if you do this, I'll do this, I promise. And your parents are like, okay, because you normally follow through. Or maybe they'll be like, well, instead of this, why don't you do this? So you kind of have to barter and trade. So skilled craft workers would have also been merchants, people who buy those products, and your traders, those who would take the products to different location and sell them. So these are skilled craft workers. Next is with job specialization, you develop many skills and talents that were needed to maintain a civilization. So sometimes, if you were that house builder or you specialize in maybe building water systems or knowing how to get water from one location to the next, you would have used that special craft that you had, that special skill, and used it to maintain the civilization. That would have been your role. The government also would have noticed this and implemented it. So let's take a little bit of a look at social class. Social class is a group of people that occupy different ranks of or levels in a society. So, upper class is your priest rulers, and as you can kind of see over here, I have a pyramid, and it's not a food pyramid, but it's in a pyramid of a specific time era, and they're looking at leaders. So it's kind of like Egypt because they have a pharaoh. So instead of a priest or a king or a queen, he would have been known as a pharaoh or a pharaoh. Now, they are always at the top. Underneath them would have been your advisor, your senior officials, your priest, or somebody of noble blood, highly related, such as a sibling of the pharaoh. You would have also had your scribes, who were considered very smart because they would have had the knowledge to transfer information. And then you kind of go down into your middle class, your farmers, your merchants, those skilled workers. So that would have been right here, these two in the middle. And then your very lower class. Those were those slaves who were often prisoners captured in war, or those individuals who sold themselves to pay off their debt. Public works is always organized by a government, and it is used for the development of large scale projects such as roads, water systems, city walls, and garneries. Now, we know about modern day roads. We have our paved roads and our traffic lights. But back in the day, they would have had cobblestone pathways. They would have also had to have developed a water system to take water from the lake and fill up their reservoirs for their drinking water. They would have also done it to irrigate their crops. And as you can see, this is an old water system. It is built out of clay rock, so you can kind of tell there's some clay stone in there. And then they use the mud that hardened and they would let it cure. The term is known as cure, where it would set for about a week and then it would get really hard. And no matter how much water they put in it, it would not soften back up. It needed a specific chemical to mix with it. So they were able to develop water systems out of that mud clay that they were using to build their houses and their city walls. Now, garneries are pottery bowls that had special lids for them. They are also, sometimes they were starting to mess with metal, so you would have seen like a cast iron pots and stuff to hold their grains. But what it was used for is to harvest people's wheat seeds, the ancient wheat seeds. So as they grew and they harvested, they would put those seeds inside the pots to preserve them. They would also put in the flour and the wheat after they had beat it, or if it was corn, any type of dry grain, they would put it into the pot and store it for the following year or for that winter or maybe for the next week, the next month, however long they needed that to last. Now they would look and study how much were they getting for so much land. They started to kind of think about math. How much would they need to keep so many people alive? So they had to look at how many people did they have inside their city. So they might have done like a head count and said, okay, this family has so many, that family has so many. And that would have led to the need for writing. So start kind of thinking about that, because after that public work, after they start looking at the harvest and how much they need, how many people are living in their city, that all leads to those last two things. And that would be your arts and architecture and your writing. So I'm going to stop there and we will pick up next time going over arts and writing.